Jordan Peele, I need you to stop naming your films super common phrases as names so I can look them up easily. Nope. Howdy heck and hey my dudes. Now, real quick before we start, this video is sponsored by me and my graphic novel, Forget Me Not Aconite. Paperbacks, hardcovers, and ebooks are now available worldwide. Simply click the link in the description below to start your purchase. If you like zombies, drama, and character-driven narratives a la The Walking Dead, then there's definitely something here for you. So, I mean, you know, there's no harm in giving it a quick look, am I right? There's also a Patreon where you can support the graphic novel's continuation, or if you want something a little less renewable, you can buy me a coffee. Any bit of support to keep the series going is greatly appreciated. Alright, now back to the video. Nope is a film that, admittedly, I haven't seen a lot of internet discussions about, aside from Logan Paul's Twitter thread, which I literally only just saw this morning after seeing the film literally yesterday, which at the time of recording this video will be approximately a week ago when you see this, or when it goes live at least. Nevertheless, when I saw that Nope was directed by Jordan Peele, the same director that did Us and Get Out, two films that I really greatly admire for reasons we will get into later, admittedly I was excited. The trailer didn't quite capture me when I first watched it, something about it seemed kind of off, but he made Get Out, which again we will get into later, and so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna give Nope a chance because I really like the direction that this director was taking. Before we get into the actual discussion and like nitpicks that I have with this film, I am gonna say that this kind of like review, thoughts, synopsis type thing is incredibly biased in the sense that I, right off the bat, do not like alien stories. I don't. I've never been able to find an alien story that really captures me and is something that I become enthralled with. It's just not my style. And the other thing, obviously, there are going to be spoilers ahead. So if you haven't seen Nope, I still recommend you go check it out. It's not for me, it might be for you, but I recommend you watch the film before you watch this. Unless you're like me and you like to watch reviews of films instead of actually watching films. So here we go. One thing that I really liked about Jordan Peele's two previous films, Us and Get Out, is that there was a very deep psychological tie between like common human fears that most people would be able to relate to and suffer from, and this kind of sensationalized horror element to it, if that makes sense. Like, it is a very psychological experience watching his other two films. Admittedly, I haven't seen Us or Get Out recently as of recording this video, but the symbolism behind those films is pretty extensively researched online. Us was chock full of symbolism, from the title being a dual meaning literally us as ourselves, and the US as in the United States of America. It's about a repression of one's guilt and the sins that they've committed in the past, literally having two Americas, kind of one underground, submerged, hidden, no one really knows about, and the one above where our supposed main protagonists live. There's also the symbolism of the inequality and how really there isn't a good guy, bad guy in this situation, and we're all victims of this society that we've built that places people on top of each other and like makes us compete with each other when we really shouldn't be. And the fact that these differences between us and those lower than us, or the us and those above us, aren't actually that different, you know, and where we are one in the same, whether we like to think of it as like that or not. Rooting for Adelaide, the main protagonist, to kill her tethered self also means rooting for and trying to preserve the inequality in our system and continuing to separate the upper class and the lower class. Get Out, on the other hand, and personally my favorite of the two in terms of the symbolism that it tries to get across, is quite frankly black horror, and I'll get into what that means in a second. Everyone wants to be treated equally. Everyone wants to be treated the same as any other person, have equal opportunities, have equal rights, and this, that, and the other. But the unfortunate case is that there are some horrors of the world and some really disturbing experiences that only people of certain gender identities, races, and sexualities will ever be able to understand. And Get Out specifically explores the concept of what it's like being a black man in a predominantly white society. I would honestly love to do a video just on Get Out on its own entirely and the entire concept of black horror, so we won't go too deep into it. But while being ever so slightly sensationalized for the sake of entertainment, this is a pretty graphic and very disturbing, kind of realistic representation of the fears that being a black person or being a POC would be. in this predominantly white society. It's really interesting stuff, and this is the kind of stuff that I really like Jordan Peele for. I think he does a phenomenal job at exploring these ideas of what it means to be lower class and what it means to be a person of color, especially considering that he himself is a person of color, and also the fact that his casts for his films are all predominantly black people is a really interesting concept, and this, among many things like the psychology and symbolism behind his films, are why I really enjoy those previous two films, Us and Get Out. Nope is the sensationalized great American alien story. Okay, that's just a little bit too harsh. There is actually some symbolism here. Nope very clearly wants to explore the idea of using animals and children within the media of Hollywood and how it's gotten to a point where it is very exploitative and not very healthy for the people involved, to put it lightly. I personally would go as far as to say that this exploitation goes beyond animals and children, and that some actors, especially if they're not A-list actors, get treated in a very similar exploitative way, but I'm pretty sure that Nope is talking specifically about animals and children being exploited within Hollywood. You see this right off the bat in the opening sequence with Gordy the monkey. The animal wranglers, actors, and other people on set assumed that they had Gordy under control, and thus they were using this literal monkey for their family sitcom, like their live show. Only to be proven wrong when a balloon pops, makes a really loud noise, and causes the monkey to snap, go on a violent rampage, and kill almost everyone within the set. This is clearly meant to be a representation of how Hollywood treats its child actors, and yes, animal actors as well, and how the sensation we see of child actors growing up, doing terrible things and going down dark paths is mostly, not exclusively, but mostly the blame of Hollywood and how they were treated as children, and how they were oppressed and exploited as children. Just look at Dan Schneider from Nickelodeon. You see a similar instance like this again when they're trying to use Lucky the horse for a commercial. OJ tries, and fails because he has no dominating traits whatsoever, to warn the white people on set about the rules with the horse and not to look them in the eyes or not to shove anything in their face and this, that, and the other, and is blatantly ignored for the sake of the commercial. This one guy shoves like one of those mirror sphere type looking things in the horse's face. The horse sees its own reflection, looks at its own eyes, and freaks out, just like OJ was trying to warn them about. This then evolves again when Glenn from The Walking Dead, I've forgotten the name of both the actor and the character, please forgive me. After surviving the traumatizing event of having literally all of his crew, cast, and audience mauled by this monkey, and being a witness firsthand to the dangers of trying to wrangle and exploit animals in Hollywood, tries to wrangle and exploit this very big, almost angelic looking alien for the sake of profit. I mentioned in my original recording for this video that I didn't like the idea of Glenn's character being the main antagonist for the film. My main reason being that his character saw firsthand how exploitative and abusive the industry was to Gordy, and just how terrible the effects were when Gordy finally snapped, and the tragedy that occurred after that. And so it just didn't make sense to me how a victim of a situation like that would then grow up and then become the one thing, like the perpetuator of this thing, of this terrible situation that Hollywood put themselves in. But I think I changed my perspective on it while recording this video. If we give credit to the idea that the film is about the Hollywood industry and the abuse and exploitation of animals and children within the media, then I think Glenn being the bad guy actually does kind of work out for Hollywood. Glenn's character going from victim to perpetrator is a perfect allegory for how Hollywood encourages and perpetuates the cycle of abuse, and how once those people become in a position of power, they are encouraged to use that power in the same way that it was used against them when they were in a lower position. I don't know if I did that justice. I've literally just woken up at the time of recording this specific section of the video, so I am a little bit tired, but I hope that kind of explains why I think Glenn being the villain kind of makes sense. It's like a perpetuation of the abuse and exploitation of children in Hollywood. So once we're made aware that this is in fact an alien story and there is in fact an alien spaceship, the movie completely changes tone. It's no longer a horror film. The entire symbolism and meaning of child actors and animal actors being exploited kind of falls on the wayside. It feels more like an afterthought, and the movie becomes a classic alien hunt film, which I've already mentioned. I don't like alien films, so I am going to be biased against this movie.
In all honesty, I really wish that the movie decided to focus on the aspect of Gordy and kind of focus a little bit more on the horses themselves and really dive deep into the exploitation of children and animal actors. Like his other films, like Us, like Get Out, they really go balls deep into the concepts and the psychological aspect of it and the horrors that he wanted to present. And in Nope, he kind of flirts with the idea, but he doesn't take the idea out to dinner, if you know what I mean. It's just kind of there on the wayside, and it's really upsetting. Gordy was like my favorite part of the film. That was, yes, hands down, my favorite part of the film. And reading through Logan Paul's thread and looking at his nitpicks that he has with the film, he actually does make some really good points that I agree with. I don't like that the idea that a quarter went straight through OJ's dad's eye, killed him, and nobody questioned it further other than, oh, some shit must have fell out of a plane. And that the horse got stabbed with a key. And again, no one questions it. They're just like, oh, it must have just been some freak accident. Like, that doesn't make sense. I don't like that. Especially since later on in the film, we see that, yes, the alien does spit out the items on the victims that it's eaten. It doesn't like non-organic things. So if it eats anything non-organic, it will just spit it out. But, and I haven't seen many other people mention this. If they have, let me know. Later on in the film, when the alien is spitting out the victims' items, it is also spitting out all of their blood. So then in the very start of the film, when the alien spits out the quarters and the keys, why was there no blood? Why was it just the quarters and the keys and the inanimate, like, non-living objects? Where was the blood in that situation? I know where it was. It didn't exist, because if blood showed up in the very first scene, then immediately it would have thrown off the suspense of the film. I agree with him on the ridiculousness of the cinematographer wanting to die for the sake of getting a perfect shot, and this is coming from an artist myself. As artists and as creatives, we do have a very dangerous tendency to put ourselves in harm's way for the sake of getting the perfect shot. I understand this. However, what I don't understand is why you would put yourself in a certain death situation that you know will destroy the medium that you have said perfect shot on. What is the point of having the perfect shot if it will not exist after you are gone and no one will be able to see it? That is what confuses me, and I didn't like that about the cinematographer. However, there are some things that I don't agree with Logan Paul on, predominantly the symbolism of the shoe. My friend had the similar thought to Logan. He didn't understand why the shoe was there, why the shoe stood so perfectly, and this, that, and the other, so I'm gonna try and explain why I think it's there. People have very different reactions to traumatic events and how their body thinks and feels and acts when in said traumatic event. A common thing that you see with victims who have been assaulted or raped is that they will focus on literally everything around them and not the actual situation themselves. Like if someone is getting assaulted in a bathroom, they might focus on how the mirror in front of them is cracked in a certain way, or if it's happening outside, they might remember very specifically the shape of a stain on the floor in their vicinity. Very strange stuff like that. This is why in Amber Heard's case, when she's talking about being assaulted, she's mentioning all of these details about the carpet and how dirty the carpet was. She knows that this is something that victims of abuse do and that they go through, and so she tried to use that in her testimony. I'm not gonna be going over my opinions on the Amber Heard situation anytime soon. So just know that regardless or not of whether Amber was telling the truth, this is something that abuse victims go through, and it is a very common phenomena that happens. And so I feel like the shoe was really focused on and really highlighted because that was something that Glenn's character focused on during the traumatic event. He's watching his co-workers and his friends and the staff all get mauled alive by this monkey, and he sees that this shoe has landed a little bit funny, and so almost as a way to cope with what is happening in the moment, his brain decides to fixate on that shoe. And I think that's why the shoe is really emphasized as much as it is. It's supposed to highlight the way that his brain is coping with that trauma in the moment, and the fact that that shoe is connected to the traumatic event very, very explicitly. So yeah, that's my personal opinion on why I think the shoe is there and why I think the shoe is emphasized so much, but I could be wrong. I am not Jordan Peele, and I don't know if Jordan Peele will ever tell us what the symbolism of the shoe is. Moving on. I don't like OJ. I feel like I should elaborate more on that, but I just don't like OJ. OJ is like the pinnacle of having no conviction and no drive as a character. And I've seen people say that they like OJ because he's way more proactive than other characters, like other main characters in Jordan Peele films. But that's just straight up a lie, man. Every single time OJ took action towards something, or he decided to have conviction and actually move forward with something and do something with his life other than just standing there and blankly staring at what's happening around him, it was never his idea. It was Emerald's idea. The only time that I can think off the top of my head where OJ actually had conviction of his own outside of his sister, and he actually tried to, you know, do something for himself, is when they leave the house, finally, go somewhere safe, and he's cracked the code that you don't look at the alien. And he's like, we need to go back. We need to free Lucky. We need to get that photo. And Emerald's like, bitch, are you fucking crazy? Which, honestly, same. That's my response to same. But yeah, off the top of my head, every single time OJ did anything in benefit to the story, it was because of Emerald. It was Emerald's idea to try and record the UFO. It was Emerald's idea to use the horse, like the little fake statue horse, as bait. It was Emerald's idea. Just period. 0 out of 10, it was Emerald's idea. It just really boggles my mind that people say OJ has conviction in this story when, like, as soon as people say that, as soon as I hear that sentence about OJ, the first thing I think of is literally the opening scene where there's shit falling from the sky, like the coins and the key and all that, and you can hear it. It sounds really painful. At first I thought it was bullets, actually, because of how they sounded when they fell, but they're falling from the sky, and OJ's just kind of standing there. He's not assessing the situation. He's not thinking about getting the horses to safety. He's not thinking about warning his father. He's just kind of blankly standing there being like, huh, that's kind of weird. I wonder what this is about. Like, oh my god, that's the most infuriating thing that I had ever seen. I'm sitting in my seat and I'm like, OJ, what are you doing? Try and grab one of the horses. Try and protect the horses. Go inside. Protect yourself. Do something other than just standing there like, duh. OJ was also by far the least expressive character that I think I have ever seen in media. Like, almost every single scene he's in, he's just kind of blankly staring. And I get why that's the case, because you've paired him up with Emerald, and Emerald is very expressive, very bombastic. She says what she means, you know? She's very out there, and I feel like I understand where they were coming from. They wanted someone a bit more cool, calm, collected, maybe a bit more level-headed, just to kind of balance out the dynamic. But in my opinion, they took it a little bit too far with OJ. The only way I can think of to fix this situation would be to either make Emerald more bombastic and more out there, although I don't actually think that's the best idea, because my friend found Emerald at least a little bit insufferable as she was already. She grew on him. It just took a little while because of how out there and loud she is. And so the alternate solution would be to make OJ human. You know, like, make him crack a smile, maybe make him tell a couple more jokes than he did in the film. Like, instead of just blankly staring, show a little bit of expression on his face when he's, like, in a situation and he's supposed to be reacting to a situation. You know, just kind of make him feel a little bit more human. I feel like toning up the humanity of OJ would have really benefited the dynamic, because otherwise it just feels a bit weird. It feels like Emerald isn't bombastic and energetic enough for the both of them, and so you don't want to elevate Emerald. Like I already said, it might be a bit too much, so just elevate OJ just that tiny bit and make it feel just a little bit more balanced between the two, you know? You can kind of see this once Angel gets into the mix. Angel is a little bit weird. He kind of speaks his mind. I don't think he fully understands social cues, which I think is really funny, and so he had a much better dynamic with Emerald than OJ and Emerald, in my personal opinion, which is weird because OJ and Emerald are the siblings. But once Angel kind of came into the picture and Emerald started opening up to him more and softening to him more, you could kind of see that OJ was doing it too, just not to the same degree. And I feel like that kind of makes them feel less like a trio. It feels like Emerald and Angel and then plus OJ, you know what I mean? And then the film director, oh yeah, the film director was just kind of there, you know? I honestly don't really know what else to say about this film. It was pretty mid, to be honest. Like I said before, I didn't really deep dive into the psychological aspect of things like his other two films, which is really what I wanted, so I will admit I was very disappointed when I walked out of the cinema. But then, and I mentioned this to my friend when we were walking out, it's not really Jordan Peele's fault that I was disappointed without the psychological aspect of things, because remember, this is only his third film, and just because his first two films went into that more psychological horror kind of aspect to it, he's been pigeonholed in like, this is what you do now. That's it. This is what you do. And so it feels, from an artist's perspective, a little bit rude to just kind of be disappointed in his work because it's not what we expected from him. It's not what we pigeonholed him as. And so in that regard, I'm really glad that Jordan Peele is trying new things, you know? He doesn't have to do strictly psychological horror, even if I personally think that is his strongest suit. He can go and do other things. And it's very clear that Nope was a film that he wanted to make. Although, that being said, even if Jordan Peele hadn't been pigeonholed into this psychological horror little hole that we had put him in with his first two films, and he didn't have those restrictions and those expectations weren't there, I still don't think I would have really enjoyed this film. Partly, yes, because I don't like alien films and I am a little bit biased about that, but also the film was very long, it really dragged on, and I'll be honest, I don't even know if people who are massive fans of aliens will enjoy this film, because even though it is an alien film, it focuses way too much on the humans involved and the relationships involved, and that's coming from a writer who loves human interaction. Like, I used zombies as a crutch to write a drama story, so I know what he's doing here. It kind of reminded me of Jaws in a way, where Jaws is a horror film about a shark, but as far as I can remember, you never actually see the shark in Jaws. That's what the alien is to Nope, at least in like the first 3/4 of the film. You don't really, you get passing glimpses of it. And I reckon if it stayed that way, I probably would have enjoyed the film just that little bit more, because it would have left the alien more up into interpretation, and it kind of would have played into the horror element a bit more, just because you don't know if what you're looking at is the alien or not. But then, yeah, just straight up chase sequence, weird, angelic alien. The film lost me. I'm sorry to people who like this film. If you really enjoy this, more power to you. I want to know why you liked it. Leave a comment. But like, I don't know. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible. I did have a decent time, especially when you put that exploitation of children lens onto it, like that symbolism lens onto it. I don't know. It's just not my favorite from Jordan Peele. That's all. Of course, my whole theory about this film being about the exploitation of children and animals in media isn't the only interpretation out there right now. I've seen people say that rather than this film being a critique of Hollywood and the exploitation of children, it's actually a homage to Hollywood, specifically the whole genre where the entire purpose of the film is to pay homage to older films, supposed to be some kind of critique on that genre. I've seen people say that it's about surveillance culture and how we always need to keep things monitored and be able to, like, you know, see things and survey things at all times. The weakest argument that I've seen is that this film is about how black people are documented in history, and literally the only thing in the film that supports this is the fact that they claim that the jockey riding the horse in the very first animated picture sequence ever was a black jockey, even though, as far as I'm aware, there is literally no documentation whatsoever on who that jockey was. I've seen some documentation saying that Nope is actually correct in this and that it was a black jockey, although those papers also admit that this is purely speculation, as there is literally no information out there whatsoever. Not to mention that the motion picture is predominantly silhouetted, so it might not have even been a black man for all we know. I would love Jordan Peele to make a film centered around black history and the erasure of black people in documented history. I just personally don't think Nope was supposed to be that film. That's just my opinion though, and like I said, there are several different interpretations of Nope out there. I wanted to give some of them a bit of credit and show a bit of light to them, even though I've made it pretty clear I think it's about the exploitation of children and animals in media. I literally just read someone say that the alien in Nope is quote unquote, a very clear representation of police brutality against people of color. And I'm sorry, how? Can you explain that one to me, please? Because I'm a little bit lost on that one. I feel like I take back what I said earlier about the idea of this being about Black history being my least favorite theory. I think this one is my least favorite because I literally cannot find anything in the film that even remotely supports the theory that the alien is a representation of police brutality against people of color. Like, what? Okay, with that being said, I think I'm done for real this time. I'm sorry I didn't go through this point by point like I did with my Resident Evil video. To be honest, I didn't want to. I wanted to talk more about the symbolism of the film and how I felt like Jordan Peele didn't really commit to it as hard as he did previously. So I guess this video is more for people who have already seen the film and they want to have the discussion about the symbolism. If I ever do something like this again, which I do fully intend to, I probably will go back to the original formula where I explain the episode or the film or whatever we're talking about as we go and go through my critiques that way. But I don't know, I just really wasn't feeling that format for this one, so you get this instead. Originally, there was supposed to be a Walking Dead video coming out today, but I wanted Nope to still be at least kind of relevant when I uploaded this video, so I pushed that back to next month. And yeah, if you guys have any videos you want me to talk about, like any films, any games, any series, let me know, because I do really like looking at the writing elements of these stories and just kind of not really nitpicking them, but just kind of mentioning things that I notice as a writer. And with that, I think I'm done. I still have to edit this video. I hope I can find quality clips of Nope. If I didn't, then I guess you already know that I didn't. But anyway, stay warm, stay cozy, stay toasty. If you sneeze during the video at all, then bless you. Again, I'm sorry for the background noise. Not much I can do about that. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.